What's going on, guys? B. Scott here with you, bringing you the wide receiver sit starts for week 1 in fantasy football. I'm going to go through every single matchup, touch on every single receiver. Obviously, there's some that are more valuable than others. No need to talk about them, but we're going to get into it right now at the first 4 downs. What's going on, guys, and welcome back. As I mentioned in the preview, we're going over the wide receiver sit starts ahead of week 1. All of the wide receivers you should be starting in your fantasy lineup. So before we get to today's content, don't forget, like the video, subscribe, share, thumb bell, all that good stuff. Comment. If there's a wide receiver I don't mention in this show that you want to hear about, drop it in the comments. I'll be glad to tell you my opinions on them. So let's get started. Dive right into it. Start with the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, 2 teams that are obviously going to be probably in the bottom 5 of all of the NFL. Brandon Cooks, this is a wide receiver for the Houston Texans, the only guy that I'm starting here in an option where you just expect a lot of volume. Tyrod Taylor's got to throw the ball to somebody. It's going to be Brandon Cooks. Obviously, it's not a love matchup for me, but Brandon Cooks should hold plenty of value here against a Jacksonville Jaguars defense that was not very good last season. On the flip side of the ball, once again, Jacksonville Jaguars. I like Laviska Shenault in this spot. An option as your wide receiver 3 or a flex. And if he sees enough volume, I think he can make a huge splash here. Going up against the Houston Texans defense. They give up the 3rd most touchdowns and the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers last season. I like Laviska Shenault here. Marvin Jones Jr., if you want to take a chance on him as your flex guy, I understand. The point total in this game is not super high, so who knows how it's going to work out. I think James Robinson's going to have a huge day, so I don't know how much work it's going to be for all these wide receivers. And then DJ Chark, he's available. I wouldn't be firing him up just yet. Missed a lot of the preseason with that broken finger, and I'm not so sure how much value he'll hold. So Laviska Shenault, he's a guy I'd be starting in this matchup. Brandon Cooks on the other side. Those are my 2 trusted wide receivers. In the next matchup, Los Angeles Chargers on the road against the Washington football team. You're obviously starting Keenan Allen. There's no way to sit him. Washington football team very good against pass catcher last season. 2nd fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. Just 10 receiving touchdowns against this defense. So you got to start Keenan Allen here. I don't really like Mike Williams in this spot. On the flip side, Washington football team, you're starting Terry McLaurin. You obviously drafted him. He's going to be starting in this spot. The Chargers secondary is looking fully healthy and ready to go. So it could be a tough spot here for Terry McLaurin to get going. So obviously you're going to be starting him here. I like Keenan Allen. I like Terry McLaurin. These are the 2 pass catchers that I can trust in this matchup. Seattle Seahawks on the road against the Indianapolis Colts. Fire up DK Metcalf, no problem. Indianapolis Colts, secondary. Middle of the pack, not great, but not bad either. And Tyler Lockett, you're probably going to be starting him here in a matchup in which 49-point over-under could be a lot of points to be had. So I like Lockett and I like DK Metcalf. On the flip side, Indianapolis Colts, I'm starting Michael Pittman all day long here, hopefully as a flex option. I really like him this week. A Seattle defense that gave up the 2nd most receiving yards and the most receptions to wide receivers. So I actually like Michael Pittman this week in a plus matchup. Also, Paris Campbell, he's a sleeper. He's a guy, maybe you're taking a dart throw. Obviously, it's early in the season. I wouldn't be necessarily taking risks. I'd be starting your studs this week until we see what kind of shakes out with a lot of these players. But Michael Pittman, he's a guy that I really like this week to potentially have 80 to 100 yards and a touchdown. So now we look at the New York Jets on the road against Carolina Panthers. The New York Jets. Corey Davis, it's an okay start here. I think Carolina's secondary was middle of the pack last season, but I really think they've upgraded, adding J.C. Horn in the draft. So Corey Davis, not a great spot for me here, but the other pass catchers on this offense, Jamison Crowder, already been ruled out for the game. And it's looking like it's going to be Corey Davis and Elijah Moore in this start. And Elijah Moore missed a lot of the preseason, most of practice, dealing with quad injury. So start Corey Davis in this matchup as a possible flex type option based on volume in a game where I don't think the Jets are going to be able to win. The Carolina Panthers, I like Robbie Anderson, and I like DJ Moore in this matchup. And don't sleep on Terrace Marshall Jr. You see in the preseason coming out of the slot. I think the Jets, middle of the field, gave up a lot of fantasy points to the tight end position last season. I think that middle of the field is going to be open. I think Marshall Jr. has a potential to find a touchdown here. A little sleeper in week 1. A guy that's probably, if he's not owned in your leagues, is going to be picked up, in my opinion, after week 1. On to the Minnesota Vikings on the road against Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, you're starting Justin Jefferson. You're starting Adam Thielen in this matchup. Potential to have a lot of points here in fantasy, period. You're just starting those guys. Cincinnati Bengals side of the ball. I like Tyler Boyd for the volume. I like T. Higgins. Jamar Chase, he's more of a risky flex type option for me. But if you're firing him up in a matchup in which you could see a lot of fantasy points, both these quarterbacks potentially throw over 300 yards, give me the wide receivers in a matchup with 2 defenses that are subpar. Albeit, Minnesota Vikings looking like their defense is going to be healthy. We don't know how good they're going to be, considering last year they were decimated with injuries. So I like all the pass catchers in this matchup. All of them wide receiver 3 flex type options. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, wide receiver 1. Adam Thielen, a wide receiver 2 or 3. And then on the flip side, T. Higgins, a wide receiver 1-2 this week. Now the Arizona Cardinals on the road against Tennessee Titans. DeAndre Hopkins, you draft him in the first round, you're going to be starting him first, second round. And A.J. Green, this is a sleeper for me, a flex type option in which Tennessee was not very good at all on defense last year. Bottom 10 in all categories. So fire up AJ Green, in my opinion, as a flex type option that could see a decent amount of volume. I know we really haven't seen any workload yet. This is a potential sleeper that could see enough volume to finish as a wide receiver 2, 3 this week. These are the two pass catchers I like for the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously, Tennessee Titans, you're starting AJ Brown, you're starting Julio Jones. You're going to start those guys pretty much every single week. And just set it and forget Arizona. Actually, defense improved over the offseason. They're going to be pretty good, but you're not sitting A.J. Brown or Julio Jones here. So fire up those wide receivers in a matchup that could get out of hand, could be a lot of fantasy points. One of the highest over-under point totals on the week. San Francisco 49ers on the road against Detroit Lions. Brandon Ayuk, you're starting him in a plus matchup, period. Detroit Lions, one of the worst defenses in the league last season. They didn't really improve all that much. So I'm firing up Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. These are the two pass catchers. Both these guys are starts for me this week. Looking at the flip side, Detroit Lions, I don't know really who to start. Tyrell Williams, you could take a chance, but the 49ers, even with all the injuries last season, still put up a top 10 defense overall, still a top 10 secondary. So I don't know if I like any of the pass catchers on Detroit. Maybe they fall behind. Maybe Jared Goff ends up with 40 pass attempts here in comeback mode. Who really knows? Tyrell Williams, maybe you want to take a dart throw with him, but I'm staying away from Detroit Lions pass catchers. You can't trust them in week 1 here. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, all day long. Now on to the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road against Buffalo Bills. Give me Stephon Diggs, plain and simple. Pittsburgh secondary, very good. Now, yes, they've lost a couple pieces to that secondary, but I still think they're going to put up a decent fight here. I'm going to take Diggs as a must-start. Diggs a must-start any week anyway, so obviously you're starting him here. Cole Beasley, Taylor Gabriel. Who knows who's going to shake out here? Emmanuel Sanders, looking shaky, but it looks like he's going to be a good to go. We don't know what the rest of these wide receivers are going to go with. I don't like Cole Beasley here in this start against a tough Pittsburgh secondary. Give me Stephon Diggs. The other guys, I'm going to wait and see. On the Pittsburgh side of the ball, Deontay Johnson, obviously for me, is a wide receiver 2, 3 this week, based on volume, in a game in which it could get out of hand in points. Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool. These are two wide receivers that are flex-type options. Obviously, Chase Claypool has the big playability, and Juju Smith-Schuster could see a ton of volume. So these are flex-type guys. I like Deontay Johnson as a start in this matchup. Same with Stephon Diggs on the other side. And Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, Gabriel Davis. I don't know if I can take any of these guys, take any risks this week. Cleveland Browns on the road against Kansas City Chiefs. You're starting Tyreek Hill. There's no reason to talk about it. You're starting him. That's the only receiver I'm going to be starting in this offense. On the other side of the ball, Jarvis Landry, obviously a guy that could see a lot of targets in a potential shootout here. And then Odell Beckham. It's not a great spot for him. Kansas City gave up 4th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers last season and the fewest receptions to wide receivers. So I'm not so sure if OBJ is a good start here. Been limited all week in practice. Hasn't seen any game speed at all in the preseason. So maybe you stray away from OBJ this week. I still think he can have an okay day if he sees a decent enough amount of snaps. That's going to be the question mark. That's the risk you got to take with starting OBJ here. But obviously you're starting Tyreek Hill, Jarvis Landry, a possible guy that could see a lot of targets in a game in which it could get out of hand. The Green Bay Packers on the road against New Orleans Saints. You're starting Devontae Adams, one guy you can trust. Obviously the Saints secondary was good last year. Top 5 defense overall. So it's a tough spot, but you're not sitting Devontae Adams. He was the number 1 wide receiver for a reason. Devontae Adams is the one guy I can trust in this entire matchup. On the flip side, New Orleans Saints. Marquez Callaway, I do like him as a wide receiver. I think he's going to give you tons and tons of value where you drafted him in your leagues. But the problem is he's going against Jair Alexander. There's no way you can start him here. One of the best corners in football, if not the best cover corner. So I'm staying away from any Saints wide receivers here. I don't think the Saints are going to be able to put up any numbers this week. It's going to be tough. Alvin Kamara show. That's what it's going to have to happen for the Saints to win. But the only pass catcher I like in this matchup, Devontae Adams. Denver Broncos on the road against the New York Giants. Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton. This is not a good matchup. Both these secondaries were above average. So for me, Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, both low-end wide receiver 3 flex-type options in a matchup in which the New York Giants and Denver Broncos, the lowest point total over-under at 41.5. I'm kind of straying away from any pass catchers in this game, as I really think both these teams could struggle on offense against each other's defenses. On the flip side, New York Giants, Kenny Galladay's looking healthy, removed from the injury report. He's going to start, but I just don't know if I can start him here with that retooled secondary of the Denver Broncos. It's going to be a tough day for all these pass catchers. The Miami Dolphins on the road against the New England Patriots. Another game in which it's a low-scoring affair, one of the lowest point total over-unders. Both these defenses are above average. Pretty damn good, in my opinion. So there's not really a pass catcher I like here. Devontae Parker, Jalen Waddle. These are guys that are going to be leaned on, and who knows what this is going to work out to be. Will Fuller, obviously out with the suspension, against the New England secondary. That's still pretty good. And on the flip side, New England. I like Jacoby Myers here. Had 100 yards against these Miami Dolphins last season with Cam Newton under center. I think Mac Jones is an upgrade, but we don't really know what Mac Jones can bring to the wide receiving room for fantasy points. So Jacoby Myers is the guy you possibly flex here. Obviously, you're taking a risk. So if you have better options, look elsewhere, but in deeper leagues, Jacoby Myers, I think, is the only wide receiver in this matchup that I feel comfortable having in your lineup. The Chicago Bears on the road against the Los Angeles Rams. Now, Chicago Bears, Allen Robinson, you drafted him. In my opinion, you should probably sit him this week, plain and simple. Jalen Ramsey, that's why. 4 receptions, 15 yards. That's what he got against Jalen Ramsey last time they faced each other. I just don't see a good day coming here. Jalen Ramsey's that legit as the best cornerback in football. If you got other options, if Allen Robinson was your wide receiver 3 or your wide receiver 2, possibly look to be starting somebody else here. This is not a good matchup for Allen Robinson at all. Darnell Mooney, they're saying, is questionable. Looks like he'll probably give it a go, but it's going to be hard for the Chicago Bears team without pass catchers and Andy Dalton under center to make an impact here against a tough Los Angeles Rams secondary. On the flip side, the Los Angeles Rams, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp. These are 2 obvious starts. Must-start wide receivers. Going against the Chicago Bears secondary, it's new. They lost most of their secondary in the offseason. You're going to be firing up Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. These are 2 receivers that you know you can trust in this offense. Who knows if Deshaun Jackson can make a big play? I don't think it's a good spot for him to be starting. It's week 1 in fantasy football. You're going to be starting your studs, plain and simple. Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp. These are the guys you're going to be having in your lineups. Lastly, Baltimore Ravens on the road against the Las Vegas Raiders. For pass catchers, Marquise Brown. I still like him here. Obviously, he didn't practice for a long time, had the hamstring injury, but reports are he's fully healthy. He's ready to go for week 1. And this is a guy that I think could find the end zone against the Las Vegas Raiders secondary that was not very good at all last year. So Marquise Brown, he's a guy that you possibly got in your last round, the later rounds of your drafts, that could be a wide receiver 3 flex type option this week. And to be honest, I might even start him over Allen Robinson. Just because of the matchup, it's that bad for Allen Robinson. But Marquise Brown, he's a pass catcher that I like, possible flex guy. And then on the flip side, Las Vegas Raiders. Who knows what wide receiver is going to work out? We know Marcus Peters went down in practice, so the secondary is going to be a little banged up here. Henry Ruggs, Bryan Edwards, these are 2 pass catchers. Which one you're going to start here? I don't want to take a chance against a good Baltimore Ravens defense and still a pretty decent secondary. So I'm not starting any Las Vegas Raiders pass catchers other than Darren Waller, obviously. And for this game to still have a 49-point over-under, that's pretty high. There should be a lot of points here. I can't trust any of the Las Vegas Raiders receivers. In Baltimore, I like Marquise Brown. Maybe Sammy Watkins, but I just got to see it first. So that's why if you got to take a chance, Marquise Brown's the guy you would go with. So that's it. That's your wide receiver sit starts for week 1 of the fantasy football season. So once again, if you like the video, subscribe, share, thumb bell, all that good stuff, comment. If there's some receivers I missed on, that's okay. Drop me a comment. I'll be glad to get back to you and give you some advice. So for the first 4 downs, it's been B. Scott, and I'm out.